Mr. Maple? Through the chair, can you tell me what's the Bay Area Urban Area Security Initiative?
The Bay Area Urban Security Initiative is actually approval, I guess it's an advisory and approval body that manages the Homeland Security funds that come into the Bay Area. It's represented by the cities of Oakland, San Francisco, and San Jose, and it represents the 10 counties in our Bay Area. It represents roughly 8 million residents.
Does it have to do
8 million.
anything
What's the
to do with
difference?
Developing a security plan regionally for Port?
Actually, that's a separate body. There's a Northern California Area Maritime Committee that does all the port security related security plans.
And so what is the San Francisco Bay Area region-wide risk?
That one is more related to land side. There's a water side committee that deals with all the maritime, which includes the Coast Guard and Border Patrol and all those different agencies and different ports within our region. There's a couple of ports that are represented: Oakland, San Francisco, Sacramento, and I believe there's one down south. And they deal with anything that's related to the waterways, anything port security related. And then there's a Bay Area Urban Area Security Initiative that deals with all the city side things, city and county infrastructure, critical infrastructure, like stadiums, airports, cities, schools, etc.
What was the criteria that was used for the initial grant that was funded for this?
For the DAC Phase 1 grant was a VARA port security grant. So we partnered with the Port of Oakland to apply for the funds for the Domain Awareness Center, because that was one of the areas under port security that the Department of Homeland Security was supporting for funding. That's one of their top priorities, is maritime domain awareness.
So there were 4 funding priorities, and one was activities that enhance maritime domain awareness. It was activities that enhance improvised explosive devices and weapons of mass destruction, prevention.
Can you hear this all right?
Recovery capabilities. It was efforts supporting implementation of a transportation worker identification credential was the construction or infrastructure improvement projects that are identified in each port: maritime technical operations for shipping carriers, port wide, risk management plan, and/or facilities security. And so it was all based around port activity, and then somewhere along the way, we broadened the scope.
That's correct.
And so I thought that the remarks from the person who spoke from the ACLU were interesting, that we pulled this back to what it was originally for, what we've been told since 2009 that it was about, and that was port security.
That's correct.
And that it not be as broad, and that we work this out and make sure that it works from a port perspective, because it was supposed to protect our port operations and protect us from terrorist attacks.
Protect Walmart, protect China's interests.
Well, and so it's interesting, because as you start to look at word choice and you start to look at the info memo, and I thought it was really interesting that a topic like this would come out in an information memo, and that a supposed framework for discussion about data retention policy has no framework in it at all for the policy, and that there's only 2 public meetings that are scheduled and a 30-day comment period, and it being provided to a very limited population for vetting. And then in the information memo, it says that the council members were supposed to give names for the advisory committee, and it was represented here tonight that public safety committee members were supposed to give names to this ad hoc committee. And I know nobody approached me to see who I was interested in having sit on this. The information memo talks about exhibits that are supposed to be attached to it, that one is the camera that's supposed to be included in this process, and two is under the sanctions provision, an administrative instruction, which isn't attached to the memo. And so I really think about the things that the city implements and how well we do them. And so it seems that we've gotten a little bit broad in terms of the policy that we're supposed to be looking at, that we have not been as transparent as we should probably be on an issue like this, that far more vetting than 30 days and the limited outreach that is being talked about should be done, because it looks like we're going through the process of making it look like we've had public participation. A framework for discussion for a data retention policy, then we would have put some draft of the policy out there so that people can
Right.
have meaningful dialogue around it, but that wasn't
Dialogue.
done. It is a
Dialogue.
little bit troubling to me that most of the stuff that we come out with has come from staff, and then it goes through the public process.
And not the public.
And when I say the public process, that is that it's noticed with the appropriate noticing period, and then a meeting like this where it's supposed to be vetted, and it's not really vetted. To say that we want to have an indemnification from the proposed vendor tonight, if we're sued on this because they're so sure, our staff report says
The
that
vendor?
they don't violate the nuclear-free resolution if it's not current work. And so, like, we would judge people only on what they're doing right now, and that their previous history has no impact. Honest in the dialogue when we say that we don't look at past history, because we do that all the time, supposedly in contracts. And so to not do it based on this one is a little bit interesting to me. And so the staff report talks about
Hypocritical.
that it doesn't talk about past, that because it's not past, and that the language of the ordinance talks about present tense, that somehow everything's okay. And so I think that there's work to be done. I think that we need to pull this back a little bit. I understand the coordination for the port operations, but I think that we need to pay close attention to what we're doing here and not be in such a rush and not go through.
Right.
It becomes very serious. When you say that it doesn't talk about license plate readers or facial recognition, what the framework for discussion talks about is nothing can be approved without the council approval. And so a whole lot of things can be put in there. But until we know with certainty, and not having all of the documents attached to that implemental, that implemental never went to committee, so that it was vetted properly, is a mistake. And a mistake that this council should not tolerate. I hope that we will pull this back, that we will put it in a fashion that we can move forward on the port activities as it was intended when we started this, and look down the road if there's something more we need to add to it. But I think that we are not doing our residents the proper service if we move full steam ahead with a full-blown programs that we are ill-equipped to manage.
Ill-equipped. Agreed. Ill-equipped.
I had a follow-up question for Councilmember Brooks. Do you want us to wait until everyone?
You had a question for Councilmember Brooks?
Yeah.
Yes, go
No,
ahead.
just
Go ahead.
in terms of what you meant by the terms in terms of pulling that back. Did you mean not to? Could you explain that?
I like the recommendation from the ACLU that we do a program that is specifically geared to a port or maritime domain awareness program, but not the expansive domain.
Thank you. So we're going to continue.
They were saying you can't dial it back. Was that their official language?
We'll continue the discussion down here. Mayor Kwan, you were in the queue, but do you want to hear the concerns of all the council members and then speak, or would you like to speak now?
I'd be happy to wait till after the council members speak.
Okay. Councilmember Kaplan, Podium Kaplan.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to all the speakers. Actually, I agree with much of what Councilmember Brooks just said, so I'll try not to be just repetitive, because I've been rereading the 2009 report, and the 2009 report not only was an informational memo, not a request for the City Council to vote to authorize anything. It was an informational report regarding the city's role in the Port of Oakland application for port security grant funds. So the original report does not say this is a city project at all, says it's a port project, doesn't even ask the council to vote to authorize it, which would only have made sense if it was a port project.
Right?
Yes! As a pro forma through agency handling, but it would have made no sense for the original 2009 item not to have been in action if it had been contemplated at all that this was going to be a serious city operation rather than purely a port operation, as the original grant states. And in addition to naming it as a port-led project in the original memo, it says the ongoing costs will be borne by the participating and affected stakeholders.
The port.
And so, given that this was originally framed as a port-led project, I wanted to re-ask a question I asked separately of the city attorney's office earlier, because I want to make sure that it's clear and that I understood correctly that despite the fact that the 2009 memo says this is a port-led project and says that all the stakeholders will participate, if and when we are sued, what is the cost-sharing agreement between the city and the port for handling liability and litigation costs?
So, Councilmember Kaplan, Chair, I'm not aware that we have a cost-sharing agreement with the port.
And your understanding is that the city would be paying 100% of the litigation and liability costs?
No, I couldn't answer that. I'm sorry. I would have to look closely at what the relationships are between the parties, who has the information, who has control, and so forth.
Ms. Kaplan, could I also suggest that we ask staff, since 2009, the report you're referring to, there have been subsequent actions where the city did take that on. So maybe we need clarity that, because 2009 was not the end of the story.
I'm sorry, I'm referring specifically to the costs. It says the costs will be borne by the participating and affected stakeholders. And when I asked earlier today if that meant that the port would be on the hook to share liability costs, I was told no, that does not.
No, but I know, but my point is that
that line about costs may have been supplanted.
So it's all in the city.
That the 2009 report that you're reading from was superseded by a subsequent act of the city council, and I correct the
10-4 copy, about to jump ship.
Did the city take on these responsibilities? Yeah, did we somehow change that relationship between the
Need
city
battery.
and porters? Yeah, and
Of course we did.
No, in the PowerPoint that we did earlier today, one of the slides was the legislative background
Right.
slide.
yes.
And
We'll
it
be back in a
stated
bit.
on June 17th and
Thanks for
January
watching.
2000.